What's up, guys? We are back with a Mezco review, and I know I don't do a lot of Mezco stuff, but this is one that I just have to. This is literally the first Mezco figure that I ever placed an order on, and, well, I've done Mezco reviews in the past, and I have, honestly, a much bigger collection than I ever expected I would, but I finally have this figure, so of course you know what I'm talking about here. We are taking a look at the Mezco 112 Collective Conan the Barbarian. So I placed an order for this guy. I mean, it's almost 2 years ago at this point. It's, maybe like 21, 22 months ago, pre-pandemic, before things really just went to hell. I placed an order for this guy, and then he just sort of never showed up, and we finally have this guy in our collections, and I am super excited about this because not only am I a big Conan the Barbarian fan for, a number of reasons, from the cartoon in the 90s to the movies to, of course, the original stories, but I love Frank Frazetta artwork in general. But his Conan is generally kind of what I think of when I think of Conan. It's just, it's going to be this or it's going to be Arnold. So this is cool to finally get something like this in toy form. Being a Mezco figure, of course, it does come in kind of like familiar packaging. This is the normal Mezco packaging, the stuff that I'm not really familiar with because almost everything I have is Rumble Society, but it's that larger format box. So you've got a big Frazetta style artwork shot here on the front of Conan, with his lady down there in the corner. You've got the Frazetta Girls logo down there as well, and then the spines have got some of that same artwork, and then the back of the box, in typical Mezco fashion, kind of gives us our big loadout, showing us the figure, some product shots, and then all the stuff that is jam-packed in this box. So let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our 112 Collective Mezco Conan the Barbarian. And honestly, it still feels kind of ridiculous that this guy is finally in our hands. I mean, again, ordered him so long ago. It just sort of became one of those things that was like, well, I'll have him when I have him, and thankfully I finally have him. And it's also one of those figures where over time you either sort of stop caring about the fact that you don't have him, or you get overhyped on the fact that he's eventually going to come. So it's one of those things where I kind of just was like, well, yeah, we'll get him. How's he going to stack up? And it's also one of those things where he definitely lives up to all of my expectations and all of my hopes for what this figure could have been, and probably, crushes some of them as well, because this is... You could probably stop the video right here. Don't, please. But, this is a really solid figure. Like, it's going to be one of those Mezco figures that is already shooting up in crazy high aftermarket prices, but he's going to be one of the ones that you regret skipping if you did skip him. There is so much cool stuff going on here, and of course, if you are a big Conan fan, especially, the pulp side of Conan, the older stories, the books, that sort of thing, you're going to really like this. There's a lot going on here, and again, Frazetta's artwork brought to life, basically. So there's that too. So let's see what he can do. See how he moves around. I think I've already said enough, probably. But we've got a pretty solid figure here. He's a little bit different because it's Mezco, but he is 90% naked. So you've got a head that can look up slightly, not too much. He does, of course, have rubber plastic hair. It's pliable, but not too pliable. The neck is independently articulated, but it's not exactly going to help you. It moves, but only barely. You've got a little bit of tilt side to side. He looks down really good. Of course, he's not a huge figure, so, throw a plunderling underneath him and have him, give him the stink eye or something. You can rotate all the way, but his hair is going to be in the way. Arms go out at the shoulders. They rotate all the way around. You've got your bicep swivel. We've got single jointed elbows here. And I know that was kind of a big thing with this figure for most folks. I don't find it to be a problem. It works just fine. He can get into two-handed poses, and it looks pretty decent. So I'm happy with it. It is a single jointed, not really rotating elbow, but it does have some shimmy there, of course, just due to the construction on it. You've got your bicep swivel, so it doesn't matter. We've got our normal Mezco ball jointed wrists, so up and down, and then just orient that joint however you need, and it'll move all over. Rotation. He's got a diaphragm cut, so he goes backwards. If you go too far, you will start to see a little gap there. Forwards a little bit. You've got tilt side to side, and then it acts as a rotating point as well, but only about that far. I mean, it looks kind of unnatural anyway. And then you've got a ball jointed waist, so he goes backwards backwards about this far. He goes forwards about this far. It's not the best ab situation, but it works pretty well. I've not had any true problems with it. Legs go out. Well, you can also rotate down there as well. Suppose I should mention that too. A little bit more rotation there as well. So you get the full effect when you combine both parts. Again, legs go out. Not exactly the Sumerian splits, but pretty close. They kick forward all the way. They kick backwards slightly. You do have your thigh twist up there. We've got double jointed knees, and they go back all the way. Really good there. The boot and the ankle situation, it's a separate piece. Obviously, the boot is not the same piece as the leg. So there is a little bit of give here as far as rotation, but it can't go all the way. It's not like a true boot cut because of the fact that, well, the boot is not the same shape as the shin. So it's going to go till it can't, which is a little bit. And honestly, it's probably enough, but it's worth mentioning. Don't try to rotate it all the way around. It's going to want to fight you eventually. And then you've got your sort of ball jointed feet down here. So you've got a little bit of rocker. This is probably the one thing I wish was better. A little bit of rocker, and you've got good up and down, and then you've got rotation as well. It's kind of, normal Mezco ankle, really. Nothing too surprising there, but I wish it was a little bit better. But otherwise, I think he moves just fine. I've had a lot of fun posing him around. He's very easy to move because, again, he's basically naked, so it's a Mezco figure, but you're not worrying about your soft goods. You're not worrying about cinching something in the armpit or in the elbow or in the crotch or anything like that. So he does have most of the same kind of stuff you would expect to see on a Mezco, save for the fact that he does have those single-jointed elbows. But I think overall, he moves really well, very easy to pose, and really no muss, no fuss with this guy. Now, aesthetically, this figure is, well, it's like I already said. It's Frazetta artwork essentially brought to life, and I can't say that in a more positive light. That is literally what this is, and I'm very much happy about it. I'm a huge fan of his artwork for a number of reasons, for a number of properties and styles, things that he did throughout his life. Conan is, of course, the one thing that I always think about if I were to, think about Frank Frazetta for whatever reason. It's going to be Conan or maybe Fire and Ice, but this is his artwork made tangible. And I think Mezco did a really, really solid job here. It is, again, a naked guy, but they did a lot to really beef him up. No pun intended, I suppose. He is a beefcake of a figure. He's not a huge figure, and we're going to do some size comparisons. But he is incredibly jacked, and he is absolutely covered in scarring and musculature that accentuates the fact that he is naked. So it's Mezco taking a naked body, basically, and Mezcofying it, essentially. So they're giving it a lot more detail than what you might expect to get or might get elsewhere, which I do really like. Even the back. Look at that back. He is just shredded, but then, of course, he has tons of scarring and bruising all over his back. So I do really enjoy what they did here with turning that musculature into something that's a little bit more detailed by giving him all these cuts and gouges and scars all over his body. Of course, the musculature on its own does look really good, so I'm really happy with the way that they sculpted the striations in the muscles, the veins. So he's not humongous. And I've said that he's not a massive figure, and he's not a huge guy for the size of this figure either. He's not overly muscled. He is essentially as muscular as you're going to get without without doping, I suppose. So he is incredibly jacked, very shredded, very lean, but I think they did a great job sculpting this out. The paint, the shading all over him looks fantastic. So he's got kind of a perma-tan going on. He's got a nice shade of brown with a little bit of a darker wash in places. Of course, all those scars have their own sort of reddish purpley hue like you would expect to see on a scar. He does have some sculpted pieces on the body itself, like this bangle over here on the right, and then of course the bracer over here on the left, which isn't too much, but it is a little bit to break him up, and it of course makes him asymmetrical. I do like that. We do have a movable belt piece here. You could take that off if you pop the figure apart, but this is how you're going to hold all of your accessories, all your weapons. And we'll talk about that in more detail here in a bit. We do have our loincloth, which I think looks really good. It hangs pretty decently. I do find myself kind of cinching the belt down a little bit to make it sort of stay in place, but it works. It's all wrapped around the crotch too, so he's got his Sumerian undies there that are all wrapped together. So the loincloth is the underwear, basically. You can see it all wrapped, and it's all pulled together in some fashion to make it work and make it look nice. It's also got its own bit of wash and sort of dry brushing on it to make it look worn and tattered. So I do like that. It looks really good. And of course, it's very nicely contrasting all of the silver and gold that's on this belt piece, which I think makes it pop a little bit more if you're drawn to his crotch for some reason. We do have our boots down here, which, like I said, are a separate piece from the legs themselves, which makes perfect sense. Good bit of dry brushing on them to bring out some of the worn, old, leathery texture on them. Just a standard boot, but of course it looks really nice. And that's the big takeaway with this, is that there's not a lot that's exactly flashy or special about this figure, which sounds ridiculous, but it's all done very nicely. The body looks great. The sculpt is fantastic. The detailing on it is really good, from little, bits of texture in the chest to the striations, all that musculature to make him look as lean as possible, but also be very, very muscular at the same time, accentuated by the belt, the loincloth, and then those boots. He does have his necklace on him. This is a removable piece. Pop the head off. You could take it off if you don't want it. So you've got kind of some skull and bones, some little bits and bobs and baubles and doodads all over it, but it looks really nice. Hangs pretty well. It does kind of get caught in the hair from time to time, so you might have to sort of push it down. And then we go up to this head sculpt, which was honestly, for a time, something that I was a little bit concerned about, because it looked like the mouth was a little bit too kind of like puckered in some ways, if that makes any sense. He looked like he was a super, super old man with a really, really wrinkly face in some of those original promo shots. And thankfully, I can say that he does not look like that in person, or at least he never did. I don't know. But that's what I took away for a time. And he looks fantastic in person. I really like the stoic expression on the face. He still looks very kind of angry and stern, so he's definitely not somebody to mess with. He's got a nice scar that runs on the left cheek. You've got a little bit of shading all over the face, so under the eyes, around the mouth, and then you've got those blue eyes that are very piercing, in contrast to what is essentially a lot of browns on this figure. So there is a lot going on with this head sculpt, from little tiny details, very much kind of a worn face. He looks very beleaguered in many ways, so I do like that. And then you've got this hair on top, which is kind of quintessential Conan, really long, flowing, dark locks with a little bit of a wash in there that really stands out. It makes the sculpt pop just enough, and then it accentuates and kind of frames what is ultimately a very, very nicely done head sculpt that is just brimming with detail. Now, as far as size comparisons go, I'm going to run through a few different things and we'll see how he stacks up. He is not a huge figure, and I need to stress that. He's not big at all. And I don't really think that's a negative. I think he's very much in line with kind of how he's described in many instances, not to mention the fact kind of in line with the Frazetta art. So to start with, I've got some Motu Classics style figures, of course, a Motu Classics, and then a Thundercats Ultimate. So this is a Super 7 Lion-O, and this is a Mattel He-Man. If I was smart, I would have some Super 7 Conan stuff out here, but I don't know where it is right now. So we're going to go with some other stuff that's still very similar. You can see that he is a little bit smaller than them, and of course he is not as bulky of a figure either, but I don't think he's too far off from these guys, honestly. These two are obviously supposed to be very huge, much more beefy than your normal human, and Conan is still a human. We've got a Mythic Legion, so here he is with Arethyr. Let's do something, something a little bit different. Here he is with a Lightning Collection figure. Here is Finster. So we get him with something that's a little bit smaller within the 1/12 scale, because Finster's not as big as everything in Lightning Collection. We'll take him away. Here he is with Star-Lord T'Challa from the What If Marvel Legends line. And then how about a Black Series? And this is all stuff that I've just got handy at the moment. I'm sure you can see a theme here. So here he is with the exclusive Ponda Baba from the Cantina Black Series set. And then for something a little bit bigger, but still, a Hasbro offering, here we go with my favorite X-Man, although maybe not the classic version, but a Marvel Legends Colossus, to give you an idea of what he looks like, alongside something that's still in the 1/12-ish scale, but is definitely a taller figure. So he is maybe smaller than I think people expect him to be, but he also scales really well with a lot of stuff. Like, I've not had any issues putting him alongside just about anything. So I think he fits the idea of what this version of Conan is, and scales really nicely with, I don't know, pretty much everything. Now, as far as accessories goes, Conan is stacked. Like, let's just get that right out of the way. He is absolutely stacked, filled to the brim with accessories, and there's a lot of ways to change up his look too, which is not to be unexpected. So to start with, we do get this extra head sculpt, and it's just a different expression, but it changes up the entire usage of the figure when you've got this on him. So he's very much unhappy. You've got a very angry, very gritting of the teeth, very much something that you would use in a battle shot or an action scene. So I do really like that. Same great level of sculpt and paint and detail that's on the first one, just a different look. We do get some extra hands with this guy as well. So there's 3 extra sets for a total of 8 hands. So you get a set of gripping hands, of course. So a set, I mean 2 of each. So gripping hands. You get a set of sort of open palm, cupping style hands, slightly style posed. And then you also get another set of just different kind of gripping style pose, but sort of loose hands at the same time. So 4 total sets of hands if you count your fists, as of course. We also get another loincloth here, and this thing's kind of interesting because it maybe isn't the most apparent thing when you get this guy out of the box, how you're going to change that up, really. How are you going to take it off? So they're both cinched on there with elastic, and essentially this is one large piece, and you loop it underneath the crotch and back up out of this elastic to make sort of like underwear on him, really. So you actually have to take this off of him. You could, pop him apart at the waist and try to pull it off, but that's not going to work either. So you do need to take this off of the figure, and then you can just shimmy this back on. And they're both on there with an elastic band, so just watch out, don't snap that or anything. But then you've got this option here, which I do really like. I'd say this is probably my preference. If I had to pick one right now, I'd say it's going to be the one with the chainmail on it. And it's got a different style of soft goods, so it's a different color, kind of a grayish color. You've got some stitch work down the side, but I do like the included chainmail. I do believe that this looks a little bit better than what we saw in the promo shots. Just the end result, I think, is a lot nicer. So you've got that super shiny silver with some sort of brass, almost rings down at the bottom. And I think it looks good. This is a very Conan aesthetic, so I'm happy there. And then we also get to this harness piece that you can put on him, which, while it looks good on its own, it actually is a functional piece. So you get this little doodad also that you clip onto him right here, and it's used to hold a specific weapon. So you've got these little ringlets that are on the belt. There's 2 of them right here. So this can be clipped on the back of this harness or on either of these to be used to hold this. So this is our very Frank Frazetta looking axe. It's obviously very worn and pitted. It's got these really sharp, jagged edges that come out the back. But what you do is you slip this guy down in there, and then now it can hold onto his back. Otherwise, it really has no place to go. So you've got some storage for your axe, which me, I've said it a million times, I love weapon storage, and that works really nicely. So you can put that there, and then you've got your axe. We've also got a dagger. So this comes in a really nice adorned sheath. You've got a really kind of jewel encrusted handle on here, silver blade. It's got a little rope that you can, what you do is take the belt apart. I would say take the belt apart, and you can slip this over the belt because it just pegs in at the waist. So you can take the belt apart and you put it back on him, and this will cinch over the top of that. So you've got that to hold on to. And then we've also got a couple of weird little accessories here. You've got these little guys. There's 2 of them. Little gold hooks. And what these are for is they go on the aforementioned ringlets that are here. And we'll see how easy it is for me to do this while I'm recording. So you put these little guys on here, and then you can put on one of his swords. So the swords both have scabbards, one with a long chain, one with just a link on either side. So you've got this curved blade here, black and gold scabbard with a little silver, and you've got this really, really pitted and worn blade on the inside, which I think looks really good. It's a very kind of ancient Arabian look and feel almost. So you pop that there, and then you can take this, and you'll take the small link and put it on this side right here, and then you'll take the bigger one, well, the longer chain rather, and it'll go over here on this guy. And again, you've got to really get it because they are small, and got to watch if you're doing it on camera that you do it correctly. There we go. And then you've got his scabbard actually hanging down at the waist, which I really, really like. I like the look of it. I like the functionality of it. And, you know, the hand, it hangs at hand length right there. So it's right where it needs to be, but it doesn't get in the way of the figure either. So I'm really, really, really happy with the way that works. I am, of course, a little concerned that I'm going to lose those things. So buyer beware. Just pay attention to what you're doing with those, I suppose. If you're like me, they're bound to turn up missing one day. And then we've got another sword also. So this is the same system. So you've got one link, and then you've got the smaller chain here with a very adorned scabbard and just a normal short sword. Pretty plain, but very Conan-esque at the same time. So I do really like those. Both quintessential Conan style weapons, and then we get our shield as well. Not much to speak of. Again, very plain, which very much fits our character here with the point on the end. Nice inlay design all over it though, and then you've got the strap for the forearm and the handle for the gripping hand as well. And then the last thing for the figure itself, pop our head off here, we're going to put this guy on it, and we've got a small cape. Now this is not wired. It doesn't have any wire running through it. It's various layers of fabric, and it's supposed to look kind of worn and, again, very plain, very Conan, but it is small enough and kind of rigid enough that you can sort of fold it to make it kind of flare out a bit if you want to get him into a, you know, like a fighting pose of some kind, you know, where you actually want him to be squared up and ready to go, like the wind is blowing it backwards or something, or it'll just drape down and it covers him, and it holds really nicely over the shoulders. So yeah, I mean, he comes with just so much stuff, but it's all really, really substantive. And that's what I really like about this, is that there's so much to do with him that, you know, if you want to use this this loincloth, if you want to use the harness, you want to use the cape, might as well be an entirely different figure at this point. He looks so much different now than when I took him out of the box. So I do like that. And then, of course, we always get a stand with Mezco. So we get our Frank Frazetta art stand, and I love this. I mean, I could never get enough of this man's work. So it's cool to get this on the stand. I don't really use the Mezco stands, but I appreciate the quality when it's there. So this guy is, again, overflowing with amazing accessories that all work really well to sell various versions of the same character. So yeah, I mean, this guy's going to be on the top 10 list, I'm sure, right? How could he not be? This is definitely one of those figures that embodies the idea and the spirit and the feel of a character. I think Mezco really just knocked it out of the park. I'd go so far as to say right now this is my favorite Mezco figure, period. Granted, he's very new, so it has that, you know, new toy effect, but this guy fires on all cylinders. There's really nothing I would think I would change about him. Articulation, while different from the norm, is fantastic, and he moves really well. But it's all about the aesthetics. It's all about the accessories, and they're good. They're just good. He looks like he's supposed to. He has so much stuff, so many ways to be changed up. It's a great figure. I mean, if I scored figures, I would say this guy probably gets a 10. He is something else when you get him in hand. And frankly, if you missed him, I have a feeling this is going to be one of those that you regret and are desperately going to be trying to get a hold of, because he really does, if anything, exceed all the hype. So that's going to do it for this look at the Mezco 112 Collective Conan the Barbarian. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And until next time.